because the camera is
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's like if you.
and I don't want the star to hit you.
Yeah, it's like if you. Yeah, it's like
Make it sit there.
Yeah, it's like there,
Okay.
there,
Anywhere
wherever.
that's just like
Back here. So.
This feels like a formal newscaster desk or something.
Yes. Like,
the kind of
yeah, like, oh, welcome to the 7:30 news. Breaking news.
What's my favorite weather?
it does go a little bit that way. But at the
Is that
social
Facebook?
one, it was going even more formal.
Yeah, it was very. And I walked in late, and I was like, huh. And then there was like, yeah, it was very.
It was too formal.
And it was like rows and chairs. So.
Because I used to do these in my apartment.
Yeah,
And then that was just like a living room setting.
right,
Yeah.
Can you
And
share
to
it?
be honest, actually it was the best.
right.
Because everybody was just feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we are.
I wish you can share it on, like, on your feed, like,
The OCD.
I mean, it is kind of an awkward spot. Okay.
Okay.
Actually, Ingvar was at, and Ina were at the first ones too. Mark, you're being really unfair right now.
There's
I was
also
gonna donate money to you for the wine, but then I realized you just donated money to me, so.
There's also flat water in the fridge if you're interested. But just letting you know. Just so for future
Thank you.
use, sparkling is also whatever you prefer.
Thank you.
Okay. Tell me when you guys are ready.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay. All right, so the simulacrum is never that which conceals the truth. It is the truth which conceals that there is none. The simulacrum is true. Ecclesiastes. All right, so welcome to the Art and Tech Salon. This is for those of you who have not been here before. This is a platform that has become a haven for the intersection of creativity and innovation. Today we're going to explore the dynamic synergy between art and technology and how it shapes our rapidly evolving world. In the spirit of exploration, I'll briefly introduce Jean Baudrard's Simulation. This groundbreaking text delves into the concept of simulated reality and the blurring of the lines between the real and the artificial. It is a philosophical work that profoundly resonates with the contemporary trends in art and technology, as we grapple with questions of authenticity, identity, and the impact of technology on our perception of reality. All right, so let's chat a bit about the text. Has anybody here read it? No.
I have.
You
Back,
have?
Yeah, it's like, back in probably 2015, 2016. I read it for an art history course.
Okay.
So now I think it is even more relatable to, the tech art space that wasn't even conceived at that time.
Yeah, totally.
Back in 2015, 2016, like the VR, XR spaces were so much less developed and accessible to people. So I think we are at a point that it's crazy when I went over kind of the main points
Oh, yeah.
about how much it aligns with kind of what's happening and the evolution through the first couple steps.
For
that
sure.
He outlines.
I think a lot of people who have read it often think about The Matrix.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's very much, I would be surprised if they didn't read this while they were either writing or producing The Matrix.
You did?
Yeah,
they
I
did.
know that, they're sure really, because that movie is so heavily reliant on philosophy,
right.
It's both Rousseau, and Baudrillard, as well as Dumont.
Mm-hmm. And in here, when I was rereading it, there's actually a character in here called Morpheus.
Yeah. I forgot about that, and then when I was rereading, I was like, oh my god, right, that's...
So most of you, I'm assuming, if not all of y'all, have seen The Matrix. So the basis of The Matrix was actually made on this book. So if you like that movie, it's probably worth just, it's a quick read. It's a bit dense, but it's a quick read. So I just have a little spiel about it, and then I'm going to introduce these two here. So Baudrard's perception of simulacra takes us on a mind-bending journey that navigates between the realms of reality and the ever-expanding world of simulations. This journey leads us through the diverse landscapes from the realm of images and religion to the territories of ethnology, politics, ethics, and the pervasive influence of technology. So Baudrillard takes us down a rabbit hole where reality and representation blur into this sort of surreal landscape, what he calls simulacra. So like picture a fun house where a mirror is reflecting a reflection and a reflection and a reflection, and you know, it just keeps going infinitely. So the real world feels like a distant memory, and then you're left questioning what's real and what's not real. So how does this connect to our shiny world of XR and AI? Let's kind of dive into that. So think about XR tech, like virtual and augmented reality. It's all about creating worlds that aren't real but feel super authentic. So when we put on a VR headset, we enter a world where we interact with digital things that seem real. So it's like Baudrillard simulacra in action. It's not just a game, it's an alternative to reality. XR blurs the lines between reality and simulation, and Baudrillard's ideas help us to grapple with that. So then there's AI, which is kind of like the brainy side of tech, right? AI can simulate human thinking, even creativity, machines creating art, which is kind of crazy. But when AI generates art, it can become a simulation, like an imitation of human creativity. Baudrillard's words make us question what's real art in the digital age. What Baudrillard really challenges us to think about is our relationship with technology. So how far down that rabbit hole do we want to go? Where our realities are increasingly shaped by technology and we sometimes can't even tell what's real. But it's not all doom and gloom. So Baudrillard invites us to question and explore the boundaries of reality to push the limitations of our creativity. XR and AI aren't just mimicking the real world, but creating new realities and art forms. And that's kind of like where the magic happens. So as we venture into our discussions today with our fantastic speakers, Calli and Jem, keep Baudrillard's ideas in your back pocket. We're at a fascinating crossroads where tech and art converge, and his ideas help us to make sense of it all. So let's embrace the paradoxes, the blend of natural and unreal, and the limitless potential of art and tech in the digital age. Together, we're navigating these uncharted waters and discovering a few new rabbit holes. So actually, I wanted to end on this excerpt. It's on page 146, if any of you guys end up getting the book. The very definition of the real becomes that of which it is possible to give an equivalent reproduction. This is contemporaneous with a science that postulates that a process can be perfectly reproduced in a set of given conditions, and also with the industrial rationality that postulates a universal system of equivalency. At the limit of this process of reproducibility, the real is not only what can be reproduced, but that which is always already reproduced, the hyperreal. And so, end of the real and end of art by total absorption, one into the other. No. Hyperrealism is the limit of art and the real by respective exchange on the level of simulation, of the privileges and the prejudices which are their basis. The hyperreal transcends representation. Only because it is entirely in simulation, the tourniquet of representation tightens madly, but of an implosive madness that, far from eccentric marginally, inclines towards the center to its own infinite repetition, analogous to the distancing characteristics of the dream. That makes us say that we are only dreaming. But this is only the game of censure and of perpetuation of that dream. Hyperrealism is made an integral part of coded reality that it perpetuates, and for which it changes nothing. In fact, we should turn our definition of hyperrealism inside out. It is reality itself today that is hyperrealist. Surrealist secrets already was that the most banal reality could somehow be surreal, but only in certain privileged moments that are nevertheless are still connected with art and the imaginary. So, stay curious. I'm almost done. Let's now turn our attention to these two remarkable individuals who are about to take us on a deep dive into the fascinating realms of art and technology. They're on the front lines of innovation, and they're here to shed some light on the fantastic work they're doing. I would like to start with the curator of the space, Calli Mirales, who is kind of like an art wizard. She is the curator of this gallery, Carrie Able Gallery, where art takes on all forms, traditional and digital. Calli's going to fill us in on technologies and smashing all of the rules in the art world. And our second guest is Jim Mathewson, the mastermind behind Mirales. You know, the place where XR gaming and Web3 story worlds kind of get an awesome makeover. He's going to take us on a wild ride through this new tech frontier. So after their talks, we're not going to shut the door on you. Nope. We're flinging it wide open for Artist Hour, and then that's your chance to jump the ring, ask questions, drop your thoughts, or even show off your art in all of its glory. It's kind of like a free-for-all discussion where we mix and match ideas. And to our virtual friends tuning in via the live stream, you're the spice of our online life. Jump into the conversation by typing your comments, and let's make this exploration of art a tech and global hangout. So without further ado, Calli.
Hi everyone. Thank you for the great introduction. I love that. I don't think I've ever been described as an art wizard, but I love that. I'm going to put that on LinkedIn.
Well, you should, because you kind of are.
So my name is Calli Mirales. I do the operation management at this gallery and for our Artist in Residence program. I also do both the digital and physical curation here. And I've also worked at Super Rare, studied studio art and art history. So I've worked at the Met, worked at a couple of other more traditional galleries throughout New York. So definitely art is very much at the core of who I am, and love exploring these kind of ideas. And this gallery is owned by Carrie Able. We're at Carrie Able Gallery. And she is an incredibly talented artist across all disciplines. So she is classically trained as a photorealistic painter, and then has since kind of departed from that, created more expressionistic representations, and then in 2016, 2017, she really delved into new mediums, so one being music, and then another being digital artwork, and really dove into the Web3 space in VR, XR, in all kinds of modes, which is super interesting, and definitely with my background in both traditional and the Web3 art space, a very good fit for me. But it's very cool to see how she has this really traditional background and has really grown so much through this VR, XR space, and really taken her art to the next level, and how the viewer can take it in and interact with her artwork in ways that would not be possible. You know, she's really creating realities in these landscapes that do not exist anywhere else and could not exist anywhere else. So it's really amazing to see how she's done that and incorporated her music, poetry, and visual artwork all in one through VR and XR technology. And yeah, I'm super happy to be here and discussing with you guys. If you have any questions for me about her artwork,
These are her pieces, right?
Yeah, so all of the artwork in this room are her because she still does also practice oil painting and in a traditional medium, but also she kind of takes these landscapes forward with her VR work. That is in the back. She does VR paintings, and she's actually doing VR sculpting in the air with a headset.
There, right?
Yeah. So she uses she'll make sculptures using 3D printing, as well as just straight up doing VR paintings and paint in the air using a headset, VR headset, and then translating these landscapes into actual physical places, or VR places that the viewer can step into. And she works with a lot of emerging technology companies to really be at the forefront and implement new emerging technologies, to always be on the cutting edge and really bring that experience to her viewers. Right now she is currently working on an album, but the album is going to be released. Each song on the album, I think there are about 10 tracks, have a corresponding VR painting.
That's cool.
Yeah, so the artwork can be, really a fully immersive experience. So not only are you listening to the music, but you're in an actual VR landscape where you can really take in the kind of emotional context of what she was going through, which I think is super cool and not a lot of people are doing right now, but is really so transformative in the music listening experience, and how it is an all-encompassing art form. It doesn't just have to be music. There's not just one thing. It can be really a full experience. Anybody any other questions about her artwork, or the kind of stuff that she does? You can let me know, or I can also
Is she on
along to
Twitter?
her. She's on Twitter. Yep, she's on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, YouTube.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I highly recommend checking out her work.
X.
Yes, now it's X, but
It's
yeah.
X.
I've heard it.
But I mean, she's
Triple
incredibly
X.
talented, and even in the next year, there's a lot of really cool, exciting things coming from her and out of this gallery. I'm super thankful that she has found success, such success as an artist in all forms, but has dedicated her time to this space, and we do a lot of mostly artist in residence programs. So, for 8 weeks, 3 to 4 times a year, we take on emerging artists, and she directly mentors them, and also we take that time to do professional development sessions with them, going over things like copyright law, but also talk deeply about emerging technologies and try to, because there can be a lot of there can be this kind of disconnect between the emerging technologies and this kind of stereotypes that come with it, kind of just breaking that down and giving them an understanding of how this technology can be beneficial to them and can, really change the experience that, the viewer has, and, they can, really have a more holistic experience when viewing their artwork, and it can also reach larger audiences. So I think it's really amazing that with all of the success that she's found, she still is very passionate about fostering, emerging artists and helping them have, all of the resources available, for them to flourish in their careers.
Does she sell NFTs?
She does. I wouldn't say she does a lot in the Web3 and digital space. I wouldn't but I don't think minting work is her priority.
Oh, okay, so
She has recently did a project with John Legend's music company, which is like a Web3 music space called Arson, which is very cool, but I wouldn't say that most of her sales are through minted work. I think she because I think digital art her and I both think digital art goes a lot farther past NFTs and the minting of artwork. I think there's a lot of potential and possibilities in this technology that don't stop at, selling artwork through NFTs or minting work.
Yeah.
But it has opened these incredible doors.
Right. Because you use XR, you don't do anything with NFTs, right? Or do you?
Well, on the Web3 side, we have the optional side that what you
Oh, that's
create
right.
can be minted.
You
as
can
an
mint
NFT.
it.
Yeah. So
Can you talk about that, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't tested that part as much because we're building a mobile game, and the whole problem in the NFT and the Web3 world right now is how big is that audience? And that audience is so small, and that audience is kind of homogenous. So you really have to, especially in gaming, you have to build a product that people want as a game first, and then will also connect their wallet and stuff. Otherwise, it just becomes the cost of acquiring users and teaching people how to create a wallet and hook it up and get Ethereum.
And that's also
way
like
too
kind of a
cost
super
intensive.
intimidating thing to even start out with to
And when
somebody
you're-
that's not familiar with
And
the
when you're
landscape.
exactly, and when you're doing an experiential project, you don't want to go through that horrible process and then like be shown something. It's like you can't even understand it. You're so frazzled.
Yeah, and there is a lot of hesitancy, I feel like, with people that don't fully understand. You know,
Right.
the setting up of a wallet, you know, it's like any Coinbase wallet, there is a lot of hesitancy and kind of skepticism, or
Yeah.
just like not knowing. They're like, I can be scammed this way, so it's a lot of lack of information, but that is really informing, I think, so much of the general public.
So we're designing it as an optional add-on, basically, where, you know, these are essentially mintable trajectories that we create, and we call them time hooks, but it's meant to be sort of everyday moments in your life, like me walking down the block on the way to this, something I wouldn't necessarily put on Instagram, but is sort of a vibe of where I am right now. I enter that, I put a description, we log that, not just the location, but also in our nexus, which is like a sort of, Rowyn's been helping out and giving feedback on, but it's a spatial world of nodes that are connected. So I can connect this with some other impression of this neighborhood. Like the bar I went to a month ago down the street, and in my mind, that sort of is the neighborhood. And it brings up like an earlier iteration of this project that I tried, which was more photo-based, location-based photos that you could, you know, tag to places. And the tendency was for investors and everyone, you know, 7 years ago to have this Google Maps version of the world in XR, where literally the street is presented in realism and you see everything, and you have 360 video that you can walk through and turn around. And you remember like 360 videos that like blew up. First the New York Times started doing them, then like CNN started doing them, then every news story seemed to be like a 360 video when there's no purpose to it.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
doesn't help if you're
It
not
doesn't
just
help you
focusing, like, you know,
understand
it doesn't make sense to
the
pivot when
story.
there's still, you know, when you have one.
I always use the
Focal
example
point.
of, you know, Main Street at Disney World. It's like you could do that on YouTube in 360 video. It's not the same. It, like, what am I supposed to look at? When I was walking here, there's all these things on the streetscape that I notice or don't notice. You know, I'm noticing maybe this person, but not the other people over there. I'm noticing this bar that I might want to go to later, but not the dry cleaners because I'm not in the mood to, you know, I don't have any dry cleaning to do, so I'm not noticing it. But in those like 360 videos, when you test it on people, it sends the wrong message. Like, am I supposed to knock on every single door as I walk down the street? Am I supposed to talk to every person? Like, what's the design intent? You don't get that sort of real, like, I don't want to use the word real, like experiential.
Subjective, you know,
Yeah,
it's
so-
like, it feels like a subjectively or personally authentic
Right,
experience
right,
versus like, you know, just like a one for
Like
one.
if I run into a character, like a person in a 360 video, I kind of feel like I have to talk to all of them. You know, it's like you have to click on all of them and talk to them, and that's different from the real world because I don't like talk to every person I'm next to on the subway
it's like,
or something.
you know, you don't even really take in most people that pass by you. You know,
You
it's
don't-
only the people
you
you
don't
really
notice
take
it.
notice that are of, you know, spark some kind of interest.
It comes down to like, you know, a previous company I owned did like point of purchase displays.
Okay.
And back then, everyone was obsessed with beacons and like iBeacons, and like in stores that like department stores would have beacons, and it would like ring your phone with like some, you know, the dress is talking to you that it's on sale or something. That seemed like a good idea to a lot of those people. Can you imagine how like annoying that would be if you're just walking down the street and like everything's selling you something on your phone?
Yeah, it's like it's just notification after notification.
And so like I was doing, you know, a product that was meant to, grab your attention in aisles and stuff like that and have like a tangible item attached to products, where that would be the shiny thing that you're focused on, like a Cracker Jack toy, which I was sad when they made digital. But
I didn't know that they made them digital.
but other they're like little QR code type things now. But there were all these products that came out, like AR for wine bottles, that it recognizes the label and it tells you a whole story. And it's like the only time I ever experienced that was when I was at a liquor store and the guy like had it downloaded on his app and like shoved it in my face and with the bottle right there and he's like, look at this. Can you see that? Like, look at the story it's telling. But you don't notice it when you're in wine shopping mode. You're going to like a dinner party, you're like doing 10 things, you're not really there to experience a story. So you're in like a foraging mode in the forest trying to find something, and so it doesn't even make sense to you.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't make sense because that's not stuff that you're, maybe if you're home, just looking at the bottle in front of you, you'll read this, in front of you, you'll read the story. But I think that kind of technology, that XR, is so applicable for art and artists because they're already in a mode where they're looking for something, and it's like, and that's expanding the interaction that they're having. And both Carrie and other artists that we mentor and have worked with in the past have utilized that XR technology because they can suddenly hear the artist's voice when they're looking at it, or have some, more.
Because you're receptive to it.
Yeah,
you're there.
It's like, and that's where it
ready.
makes sense. It doesn't. You're already in a place where you're, engaged visually and in a space where you are looking at it and prepared for it and interested in knowing.
And I think it's interesting because, like, on the digital side, it mirrors what happens in the real world, where you get all of these cool projection shows and stuff again in the last 5 years.
Oh yeah.
In New York, even right before COVID, but especially after COVID.
Like Art Tech House.
Art Tech House and ones like that. When you're talking about the AR, I was thinking of their bar upstairs that has.
But I could see you're like not just near aid or noted, like the whole experience that you're creating in an environment like Art Tech in some way.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're trying to design around on like the narrative building side, is that these are spaces. So what would you want to experience in a space?
Sorry, can you tell them what you're doing? Because they might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, I mean, where to start?
I did
tell them a little bit.
But
yeah.
like maybe start with the main.
Like, so
thing
each moment that you put in there as a time hook gets
it's an app, right?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a gaming app that we're building in Unity. The Web3 part is on Polygon, and it's meant to be sort of what's the purpose, as we were talking about the other day.
Right.
The purpose is more to sort of blow out themes that you connect with your identity, with your average everyday life. It's like, I'm at the dry cleaners and waiting in line. How can this become like an amazing fantasy story? And it's sort of, we were doing this before, but when you see like Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's kind of like, how does this moment of me in the mall connect me to a Chinese opera singer or something?
Right.
It's like you have all of these different sort of connected trajectories.
Other people can interact with them if you set the privacy to allow that.
Yes,
right?
and that would be on chain at this point.
Right.
So like you would essentially mint a packet of data, which is like your location and all of this on chain, and then someone else would reassemble it in the app. And that would be the way we would share it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think it comes back to your original intro and the text that you were reading. I feel like everything shifted from like a matrix model to more of like a multiverse model in the last year. Like Spider-Man and everything is all back with all of these multiverse, and I think I feel like I've seen like 4 different major movies in the last year that really pull on that narrative, where it's not like just simulation versus reality, but it's like that this is all sort of connected simulation.
Like the Loki TV show.
Yeah.
Because there's multiple dimensions there. But yeah, so it's like, how many dimensions are there? And I also feel like with Near 8 as the umbrella brand,
Mhm,
right?
yeah.
Like you're creating different dimensions.
Right. Which track with the way people are right now and the way they see themselves, I think. So it's like, cosplay and people's identities with avatars and
Yeah,
whatnot.
I love how you guys are, I think, really showcasing how, people's reality is their perception and it's so subjective. So then, like, you and everybody, like, wants to be the main character of their own life.
Exactly.
So you're, like, I think it's super cool and so innovative that you are building these storylines and, like, the universes that, are in people's heads and their reality is, like,
And I think on the art and tech side, that wasn't really possible 10 years ago.
Oh,
because
absolutely
people,
not. No,
it had to be informative, it had to be objective, it had to be like apps were for information finding and sorting,
And
as if it's all real, like and true,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
And then with the whole fake news like blow up in 2016, you started to realize that all of these things being sorted are being sorted. You have no way of verifying.
Right.
Well, I
what's being
think the
said.
last even 5 years have, like, we are seeing such a tech renaissance.
Yeah.
And, like, our abilities are so
I
much
like that you
farther.
said it that way.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, I think, like, it's like, and how things are expanding are so much quicker and we have so many more capabilities than we did even 5 years ago. Even when I first read this, when I was in college in, 2015,
Sure.
2016, where the tech is
Yeah.
now versus then, incredibly different. I would have not even
yeah.
been able to conceptualize,
But I think it's,
what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also on the social media side too, going from Facebook as a paradigm to TikTok, where it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
a totally different experience, or from Facebook to Snap and from YouTube to TikTok.
Yeah, or even now,
Yeah.
like how prevalent like live streaming is.
Right.
Like, it's just like how,
Which is
social
what we're
media.
doing.
Yeah, it's like what you're doing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
shout out to everybody watching. But yeah, it's like,
But-
in a way that, the globalization of this technology has, made it so much more possible to understand the more subjective realities that we all live in.
And by having these technologies be understandable as platforms that, show you a vibe, basically, as opposed to facts, it becomes easier to verify, easier to relate to, and it just sort of fits in with your natural way of judging, is this real or not, or how authentic is this, And I think that if someone displays like music and, symbols and language to you in a shorthand like that, you can connect and say, yes, this is real, and I find this meaningful. Whereas
Where
if
it aligns with your reality versus like
whereas a
your
news story where it's
yeah.
like, it just,
You're just like, that doesn't, it's hard to fit into your
Right,
reality. Whereas
right.
like this is more curated or more authentic experience, or, recreation of experiences or capturing of
Yeah.
experiences that people are like, oh, this is something that is so much more understandable and really fits into my world. Like, it's like
Right.
how I see reality.
and I think it's good too on the AI side, like people are worried about deepfakes and stuff, but showing deepfakes to everyone shows you that this can be manipulated and this can be manipulated. You need to look at everything.
Yeah, and
critically.
yeah, it's like, that's the thing, and I don't think, I think more people should be familiar with it, and then it's like, I think it should more, instead of just being like, this is bad, this technology is only for bad, manipulative
Right.
things. If that's not the case, I was like, you should have a healthy amount of skepticism.
Right.
Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, you should be skeptical of things and what you're perceiving, because anybody's, reality is always skewed and always biased.
Right.
So then being just like, I think internalizing that and having that skepticism isn't a bad thing, and like being like, well, this technology doesn't have to be bad or scary. Like, yes,
Right.
like it is used in a manipulative way, but like if you have an understanding and you're more aware of like, science,
When you
then
see
that's
how
like,
easy it is to generate one, then you won't be as fooled by the, whatever politician deepfake. Like Nancy
Yeah.
Pelosi, who was made to look drunk and they slowed down her speech.
yeah.
And, that became a thing on the internet. It's like, how do you convince
But,
someone
yeah,
like
it's
that
like-
that it's not real? But then if they
Yeah.
can generate their own deepfakes of themselves and everyone else very easily.
But like it's also like,
Yeah.
what is now a deep fake, it's like, well, when you're learning about history, you always know that it, like, it's like any history is, biased for whoever is telling
Yeah.
it. So like,
Exactly.
you always have to, be slightly skeptical and like, understand and like learn for yourself who the information is coming from, and
Yeah.
that's gonna, color whatever, but I don't think that's that's just the newest
Yeah.
deep fake.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent you're posting anything on social media, whether it's representative or literal or claiming to be literal, like you're still doing that affirmative action of trying to communicate something. Some vibe or some, even if it's just a work of art you're posting, you're trying to,
I think there's positive ways to use AI as well. Like you use AI and you're noted to tell stories.
Right. To do some, almost to narrow the field of selection a little bit for people, and to create some branches and selections. And we've tested it in other ways other than the ways you've seen, essentially pulling locations nearby and then making that place meaningful. So it's like you can take any place and make it meaningful. And that's what we've gotten in our testing in the past is like back to the Google Maps XR view of the world 5 years ago. It's like that kind of like centers around celebrities and like who has pictures and like what buildings do people know of. Like the Empire State Building, you can show to anyone around the world and they're like, ooh, the Empire State Building, I recognize that. And it gives you a vibe. It's like, but you can't just show a random building to like someone in India and have them be like, they don't understand it. And like you can show a Marilyn Monroe picture walking down Fifth Avenue, but if you show a random person walking down Fifth Avenue, they're like, who is that? Should I know them? Or they turn off their perception. They're like, oh, that's not for me. I don't know who that is or care.
Right. Well, I think I think AI can have a really like scary, nefarious kind of reputation, which I don't think should just be the, how people take it in. Because I think it's an incredibly useful tool that can create that connectivity, it's like, because it creates an algorithm that you're like, well, these, it's like, well, if you saw all the people that walked down this street and saw like the specific things that they connected to, that's going to be so much more important than people just being like, oh yeah, that's just a building, or let's take this one picture of every single building you come into contact with.
I mean, with the AI, it all comes down to like what people call guardrails. It's like, what are the guardrails that make this, a game that uses AI as opposed to just chatting with ChatGPT, and then it's not that much of a game. It's like,
yours tells a story.
Right. So we try to use it in a specific way by prompting it according to a lot of work and research and experimentation.
So if there's a photo posted by a user, then
with
the
AI,
with a description, and the AI tells a story about that photo.
And it creates another photo. We also have, I think did we show you? We've also experimented with video creation.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, so like using some of those tools where, we create the narrative based on your description. We create a photo right now, but you can also blow that out into like a whole, 5-minute video based on what we put there. Yeah, so based on what we're generating.
But in that way, it's such an incredibly useful tool. With those, specific parameters put in, it can build these worlds in ways that it would, in the past have taken so long, and it can give such, a holistic experience to the gamer, which is so incredible. And, it's not creating, a new truth or, a reality. Right. It is creating an experience, which is,
your identity.
Yeah, it's creating an experience, and it's and a reality around you.
It's
or
empowering,
different. It's which I think is incredibly very very cool and really interesting technology that's not inherently scary or negative, and that wouldn't be possible without this AI technology. So I don't think it is. It's just and it's not you're oh yeah, we're just throwing it at the game and it's just creating things. It's heavily researched and has these guidelines and parameters around it too. So each viewer is getting this amazing experience, individualized experience.
And it's sort of it's obviously a big debate for artists and writers and the Writers Guild and everything, but I don't think they really have much to worry about. You start to see lazy AI and it's that looked kind of amazing the first time I saw it, but when I've seen 1,000 in the last month of lazy AI stories where someone puts it up as their work, and it's just like teachers in school, I'm sure history teachers can like detect when someone's
Well,
using
yeah,
AI.
hallucinates and makes up false
I
things.
actually go over this a lot because when we have weekly sessions with the Artist in Residence program, and I particularly go over artists that use emerging technologies to create art, and I say being overly reliant on AI is always a problem, and you can always tell. I mean, yeah, like maybe a couple of years ago, harder. Now I'm like, yeah, I can so easily spot, anything that's just generated.
Right.
It's just like, and this technology, as amazing as it is, like you can't, it's not made to be, it's not
Yeah.
made to be created. It doesn't have that emotional expression that is really what connects people to art. And, I think
But
it's
if you
amazing
input
that
your
you're
emotion,
gaming.
if
No,
you
that's what I
input your
think
emotion,
really
then
makes you,
what does
because,
it have?
but yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
which I think is how
Yeah.
you guys are doing it and creating, your gaming experiences. You are like the person's the input, and their
Yeah.
creativity
It's
is the
their
input.
emotion that's going into
But
it.
yeah,
as
it's like, but you
opposed to-
can't, but this technology, I don't think writers or artists are threatened by it, because I
Right.
think as anything, it's a tool. Just like the
Yeah.
camera.
Exactly.
Just like the camera was such a huge threat when photography, was invented. It was such
To
a threat
painters.
to painters and
Right.
artists, and their traditional art space was so apprehensive to really see it as an art form, even still. But then, you see that that's not what it's, it's just not a one for one. And just because you have a camera doesn't make you an artist and doesn't make you creative or, your work engaging to people
Well,
taking
And
it in.
it sort of exposes what's, formulaic too, and when is it okay to be formulaic? It's like if you gave it every Law and Order episode ever created of all the spin-offs, like 1,000 Law and Order episodes, and told it to do 50 more, it could probably do that pretty
Yeah.
easily. So it's like that writer might have to do something else
Yeah.
instead eventually, but then again,
But it's also like when you get into
Yeah.
writing, you want to do it so you can be creative.
Right.
It's just like,
Yeah.
if anything, it gives you the authority
Yeah.
to be more creative and push things past the boundaries.
Right.
So I think if anything, a lot of the times when we see these, and this is the biggest, the biggest jump in technology, I think, in the art world since, the invention of photography, what we're seeing
Yeah.
now. So now I think we're gonna see this really big push in creativity, because now people are able to kind of push past all of,
Yeah.
a lot of what is already out there and really be boundless creatively.
So I actually know that we have a few teachers and photographers and people who work with AI here as well. Eno,
Huh?
do you want to jump in
Mhm.
here? You are a photographer that also works with
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
cause like me, like when I use AI, I've been using Midjourney for a year now. I started last year.
But you
December.
also do photography as
Yeah.
well, and you don't feel like there's a conflict between the two.
No, cause like on my AI, I became like more expressive too. When I do my AI, I express all my, what I'm thinking. Especially I love style, I love subculture. So every time I do AI, everything's like all about subculture, all about punk rock, ska,
So
indie
how
rock.
do you use it? What's the process?
It's like a lot of prompt.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you just tell it like what you want
yeah,
to see. Right?
for example, like punk rocker sitting in the rooftop of Manhattan building, something like that, or like a punk rocker inside CBGB,
yeah.
yeah, something like that,
Well, because
And sometimes I also merge it with my photos too.
Yeah, I think if anything, because I also am a photographer that has, worked in particularly like film, like black and white photography, but I don't think that there's a conflict. If anything, I think it gives you the license to be more creative, and you can recreate these landscapes that would be so expensive, to actually do it. Now you're like, wow, well now I have this background and I can either superimpose a photo I've taken or build upon this in a way that would not, would have taken so many man hours and have not, would not have been as worth it creatively for you. But I think that the AI technology, I don't really see the conflict, it's like in writing and visual art, I don't really see it as an inherent threat, which I think is so commonly, kind of the attitude that's taken on
Sure.
right now.
I mean, Xavier, you're a teacher at a well-known art school.
Yeah, so my thoughts about it is it's kind of a worry because I already I hope you're not watching.
No, that's okay.
But
Yes, I
I
can.
already have an issue with kind of lethargy with students.
Yeah.
Because I find that over-reliance on technology breeds that kind of lethargic behavior, especially with creativity. And when you're not building dexterity and you're just over-reliant on technology, I mean, pencil is a technology, a piece of technology either way, but it helps with that kind of dexterity. So for me, it's about finding a balance. It's about finding like a healthy balance between technology and reality, or because it's all reality, and the analog and the material world. I'm not quite sure if students are responsible enough to manage said technology. I'm not too sure about that, because working with students, you find they want to finish an assignment and they don't want to be pressured. You know? So that's a weird dichotomy already as an educator to
right, to have
you know,
to deal with it.
to have to deal with. Then you have to be worried about, say you're dealing with like writers,
Sure.
critical writing. That's a whole other can of worms that you're opening now. Is there technology that's available? Yes, there is, that can spot AI writing, of course. But then, how many instructors are, aware of said technology?
Especially older ones.
Especially the more older professors. So there is some kind of like, for me, this is my issue with anything that is new or innovative. We have this kind of like knee-jerk reaction to run into it.
Yeah.
I am more like, let me study this thing.
Sure.
And see how it can be used on a much more broader scale. Because for me, Twitter isn't a good deal, or Instagram isn't necessarily a good thing, or Facebook isn't necessarily a good thing, because we haven't studied how to integrate it properly in the society. We're using it and being abused by it. And I don't think enough attention is placed on that. It's just new.
It's not looking at the consequences, it's just looking at the trajectory.
Yeah, it's just looking at, we have this new technology, so let's just run with it. I think taking a step back is always a good thing. And I was really happy about like how our NFTs now we're taking a step back to really study this thing. Because just diving into it head first, you might just land on some.
And all of the, with the NFTs, I feel like a lot of the skepticism or like apprehension that's come along with it, because people quickly found ways to exploit it, and it was, in terms of like financially. So then I think now it's really interesting that we are, in this market now where they, they're not selling, like how they were, like, even comparably, but, now we can see how that technology for artists is great. And like, these artists have been making artwork regardless of like, the NFT market. So I think that's super interesting. But I mean, I think your point in saying that as a teacher, being skeptical and kind of taking it in when teaching students, because I don't necessarily think, especially now because we are in this renaissance and don't know, long term or how things are going to change so quickly, I don't see it as a teaching tool. I see it as like a tool for experimentation where we are now.
I don't know if it's not a teaching tool, but I know it should be handled responsibly.
Yeah.
I had a particular student in summer. I was teaching a summer course, drawing course, and they, in order to produce work quickly and pass the course, they just produced a book, and I was like, you can't fool me with this now. Come on.
Well, I mean,
you
especially
had a whole project a week ago, and then you just switched on me and just have a whole ready book that
just
you
to have
printed
it.
out.
But I was like, but as a tool for learning, then they're not doing the learning that they need to do, especially in their drawing class where like, this is something that does draw, you need the physicality. Not saying that you can physically draw in a VR space, like that is possible, but it's also that doesn't mean the time frame that it takes to do that doesn't exist.
There's a certain dexterity that you acquire when graphite or lead or whatever you use touches the paper.
Sure.
The body responds to it differently because there's vibration there. There's a kind of vibration there when you move. There's a sound. Your senses. And I've been in VR space. Your senses react differently in a VR space as it does in a real space, in the sense of real.
Like in a tactile space.
Yeah, not much more. Yeah. So, I think, especially also as a father, because I have 2 young kids and they're all about like gadgets, and I'm like, yo, listen. Yeah, you can use this, but you shouldn't be used by it. And I think that's where the line is. It's like,
right.
more often than not, we're being used by technology unwittingly. So
right.
Yeah, just kind of carried along with the current.
You know, and then we run into problems with it, and run into problems with ourselves, like the rise of like anxiety in young people. I think that's like a huge.
Oh yeah, I mean
it's
social media and how it has.
And not just social media, just like technology, the screens, just having these lights.
Right, and just like constantly taking in content and having because it does kind of have this effect on the timeline and how everything feels so much more rushed.
So that's a part of the conversation that I'm not hearing. It's like, how do we manage like for the young people that's coming after us? How do we leave a kind of like blueprint of like how to operate or how to engage with technology? It's like we're just doing it, and I think that's almost too short-sighted for me.
Yeah.
Like that's just my nature, anyways. It's like I like taking time with whatever I'm doing. I like getting. I know.
Well, your artwork is like that. You take time with it.
Yeah. So, that's my. It's not an issue, but my observation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, I think it's that healthy skepticism. Like, not. I mean, I think embracing it to a certain extent and seeing how it can be used in the positive, but also not being like, this is the be-all, end-all in any way. I think it does, because that's also everything. Like, there's so many through all of history, there's been so many technologies that come in and out, and we have, but there's no, like, especially when you're starting out and where we are now, there's no, like, I mean, even now, there's no blueprint to life and how it should be, but I think it's doing your best and protecting your sense of self and reality, in your autonomy, I think is super important, and protecting that, against, a purely digital space, and I think there's a lot of, there's so many things that can be enhanced from this technology, and like great, like, and I think like the whole gaming experience, I'm not a gamer, that's a game that I would want to do, and I think it would be such a real, like, amazing escape from things, but I don't think that, I think there is still protecting your own reality that you've created for yourself, that I don't think children or like, younger people that are learning may not have the tools to do.
And that's where the problem is, because it's like you're protecting your reality, but they say ignorance is a bliss. So when you are not educated, how can you protect yourself from something that you are not educated?
Well, that's where I would be more skeptical about, introducing anybody that's just learning art, it's like, or like, in still where they're in the teaching area, especially where we are right now, which is still so emerging, and that we have not been able to see the long-term consequences and how rapidly things have, so we are in this beginning phase. So I think anybody that is in a place where they are still actively being taught, they should, be, with kids, I wouldn't necessarily recommend them just creating an outside reality. So I think that it is kind of just protecting yourself and those around you. It's kind of, and as we're able to watch these consequences and track statistically where things are going and like how it's able to be like, fully embraced.
Could I say one thing on that? And I totally agree on the, sort of mindfulness and is this a healthy relationship with digital, and what does this product intended to do? Because like so many early social media products are intended to generate anxiety, or fear of missing out, where it's, it's a whole different way of communicating. It's like,
It is.
hey, here's what I just bought. It's like, why am I cheapening myself to why am I telling my high school friends what I just bought? Like, why do I need to say that?
Yeah, why do I have to
why don't I reach out to them
why
and
do I have to
say,
show validation this
why don't I
such a
send them
public, it is in such a spectacle.
send them a poem
I mean,
instead,
you have a son, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
two,
you
yeah.
so you have children.
Yeah.
So you probably think about these things.
Yeah, and what I've come around on is that when I was growing up, I was really into video games. It was always thought of as just sort of, like, I think of it like empty calories, like sugar or candy or something, where it's like, no one's really going to get mad at you for having some candy here and there, but it's not good for you, and it's this and that. It's totally different now, and like with current generations, it's so tied into your identity, and it's so social in their way, like on Discord and Twitch and everything. It's people don't like go to parties anymore in college. They do their but it is sort of a social, identity building experience that's empowering and sort of, I think, counters some of the rest of the bad stuff of digital, like fake news or negative stories or fear of missing out. Yeah, so I think you can have safer spaces and helpful spaces.
Right.
So
Like
how
it's
do
about
you-
taking the time.
So
And I
how
also-
do you know as a innovator integrate this into like the everyday learning or
Right.
learning space? That's my question. to
All
you.
right. So here's the thing. So I've been thinking about this because, as you know, that's how we met. We're both teachers as well. So as you know, some of y'all know, some of you don't know. I also teach, but I teach with students who have mental and learning disabilities. Extreme. Some of them are very extreme. Some of them can't even speak or hold pencils. But I teach them painting and printmaking and photography. But because some of them can't physically always
Move.
move, I'm working with UX designers. Because in the past, it wouldn't have been possible for them to be able to create art because they cannot physically do it. But I'm working with UX designers to create applications because some of them can like touch iPads or speak to iPads or a computer, and then in that way they can work with AI or different programs to create artworks. And it creates an avenue for them to express themselves.
And that's
By
a
voice.
controlled environment
Yes.
as well.
It is a controlled environment because I'm there working with them slowly.
And I think that's
You know what that brings
the
to
most
mind?
important part of it is that when we're introducing these technologies, like to kids, like my son, 2 years ago, he was in Jamaica and a phone was like promised to him but never given because we believe like kids shouldn't just have phones, even though because it's not safe on the news, but it's a much more safe in the street for kids. But here it's like everyone on phone. I know everyone on Instagram. I know it's like, oh shit, what to do this? What do you do? So how do you, like outside of your home, create? Is there a system for your kids to like use these technologies in a controlled way? I mean, outside of like the child lock, which never works because kids know how to get around them. How do you create like systems that helps the parents or
Right.
helps the teachers to ensure that whatever the intention is for this device or this application or whatever, it's like brought through, and that's the purpose of like when they're interacting with the technology, that's what's being done and not like something else around the corner.
I think it's hard because I don't think there is any one answer to that, especially now as all of these technologies are emerging. But I think really showing how it's a tool and it's not a given, and it's an enhancement. It's like a tool, you know, if you're like, okay, you can do this project with graphite, or you can do it with paint, or like, you know, so it's a tool in the same way those things are for you. And I think I'm doing it through a lens. I know, like, socially it goes way beyond it in a way that I think is so much harder to even define or speculate on, but I think in like a creative setting, using it as a tool is amazing, and you're giving these students that would not have the opportunity to like physically do these things to create, but still, like, you know, showing that it's a tool that the other students that do have, you know, the ability to physically create, they're like, well, they don't have this tool available to them, or like they don't have the, you know, they can't use these tools available, but they can use these tools, and really utilizing them as purely a tool and just a way to act creatively, and not being like, oh, well, it's better, or you're creating this better, and not putting the emphasis on it. And I think right now we're at a place where it's more controllable as these things come out. But I think also, like, in a drawing or painting class to, you know, people that are able-bodied or don't need to, like, you know, use technology as an aid to be able to create, I would honestly, especially in the beginning phases, would not encourage using any kind of this kind of AI technology for creation. You know, I would be very sparing and very, because that's not the level of artists that should, you know, it's like that have the facilities to really, you know, have it enhance their work instead of their work be reliant on it.
Yeah. I have a question. Xavier, how old is your kid?
One is 11 and the next one is 6.
Yeah, because I can share something, because my niece, my sister's daughter, because I have a niece that's 10 years old and 8 years old. It's like they're very strict with their kids with the gadgets. Because like they're only in the Philippines. Yeah, because like, you know what, they have a gadget time of 4 to 6, very strict.
China does that too.
Yeah, 4 to 6, that's only their gadget time. So during the non-gadget time, they draw, they paint, they use Lego, stuff like everything like manual socialize, they play each other, they talk each other.
I mean,
Then 4 to 6, they play Roblox.
Gotcha.
I think it's interesting.
Very strict.
I mean, I do something similar where
It's
I
like
go
you just do
like-
that. No. And then okay, they stop.
Yeah.
Because here you cannot do that, right? Can you
Yeah.
do that here?
Or
Or you can
It's
get
not
sued?
enforced, I would
It's
think.
not
Yeah,
enforced,
because
but
Philippines, you can
And
get
I
spanked.
have
Do you
the-
do that with your kids?
Yeah, I do have time where it's
Right.
like, it's just an hour on the gadget. But then what happens when I'm not there and their mom is
Right,
more
sure.
lenient, you know? Or how do so like I'm a big fan of technology, and I like technology that helps, you know, like that heart machine that helps in Zimbabwe, where the doctor is able to just go see a patient in a rural area and do a diagnosis
Or
and just
clean
get
water.
information and clean
Yeah.
water from here or whatever. That's great. But it's just like checks and balances.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's like always checks
But
and
that's
balances.
also the point of these art and tech salons, is to create a dialogue, right? So like that's why I keep having them.
Yeah, and I think specifically, like, there is no right answer, and I don't think, I really am a believer in the tech that is evolving, and I think there's a lot of amazing applications either within the art space or outside of it. But I also think, we should be skeptical, and we should also be watching, cause and effect and seeing the consequences, and really have these conversations. And also, not everybody has this really altruistic or for the greater good approach to everything. There are ways and there are people that are more nefarious or that are looking for a capital gain, and I think everybody needs to stay skeptical of these things and really be able to think about them critically and form their own opinions.
I think one interesting thing that I've been thinking about lately is the availability of things like Facebook and Instagram changes positively your real world. Like in some ways, when you look at the 90s and 2000s, we were on our way to one big Walmart, one big McMansion with 3 models that you're aspiring to, plastic furniture from Walmart that,
Yeah, no thanks.
now that's not Instagrammable. So it's like
Right,
strip
that's
malls,
true, that's a good
strip
point.
malls and shopping malls, and me
It's
and my
making-
selfie is not that impressive.
Boutiques go.
So then you have your
Yeah.
apartment, your whole space becomes, you know, instead of you having to invite your friends over once in a while to do it, like you're always on in your apartment on social media, and you start to think of all of these spaces and what
And
can
how
I
it's
do with them and
designed.
how can I optimize
Yeah.
them, how do I design it?
But
And you train yourself to do that when people were being lazy in the real world
That's
with
true.
architecture and with design and
well,
with
the
their
emphasis
spaces.
on subjectivity, I think, yeah, one for like, you know, people's lives, but also in general, I think because now everybody is posting their subjective experience, or
Right.
even their subjective style preferences.
Yeah.
That makes people be like, well, I'm aware, and now they're aware of like algorithms and how things are targeted.
Yeah.
So then they're like, well, I'm aware like of this and my preferences. So now you are more skeptical, which I think is good, and it's training people to be more skeptical and understanding how everything
Understand
is
what language is
subjective.
this piece of furniture conveying. You know?
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
just like, and I think aesthetically, but also socially,
like I was
it's incredibly.
always fascinated with mid-century. You know, even when it was so far out of vogue,
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like it was
that's
junk.
right,
You know,
right.
it's like vintage
And
mid-century
it's
was
so
junk.
hard for
Yeah.
even to find that or track that down because it was not.
It reminded people of their grandparents or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Igor, you're an artist. I want to hear from you. You haven't said anything.
I'm just here to listen to it.
Oh, come on. You have no thoughts. No thoughts.
I mean, you guys are talking about a lot of different things, like the social aspect, the hardware aspect that he has concern for the kids, and also like the art making aspect. I mean, I don't moralize against any of it, except maybe the technological, the blue light, the bad screens. I think that's detrimental in terms of physiology.
Mhm.
But for the art making, you know, I mean, it's gonna. I don't see anything bad in like immersing yourself technologically, or the balance. It's gonna always shift in terms of the amount of analog versus technology, and you know, things will become very mannered, and you know, you see the same shit every time, but you see that in handmaking also. So there's no.
Do you utilize tech? I mean, well, what medium do you work in?
I do social media for. I work for an art sculpture studio that incorporates like 3D modeling, robot milling, like the whole gamut of you know.
But you work. I mean, in those, I assume that you would have the time, or like, you know, it would be very beneficial to your specific medium to be working with.
I mean, I've
these
done
technologies.
I used to manage the hand working, you know, the sculpting, carving, that whole aspect. I've always had a sculpture job in Manhattan the last 25 years. So I mean, I've been in photography since I was a kid, blah blah blah. You know, but I don't see any benefit or whatever.
I think, yeah, again, I think for me, it's
even for like,
cool.
I mean, what you're talking about, limiting kids to like the analog aspect of doing things and the technological. You know, if the interest, so long as they have interest and they could delve themselves into it, you know, I don't see any drawback in starting digitally.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
starting with a pencil. I don't think it matters. Aside
Yeah.
from the physiological effects of, you know, phones, radiation,
Sure.
blue light, blah blah blah.
With too much screen time.
Yeah,
My vision's
yeah.
gotten so much worse.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
the
I
last
don't know.
few years.
I got
I can
when I
barely,
work on my
read.
computer, I
Yeah.
wear my contacts and I got blue
I
light
think
glasses, so I don't have
I
to.
would push back a bit because I can see the difference. Like, because
From before and now.
yeah, from before I know, because in the classroom, I've been in the classroom for a minute.
I was gonna say, yeah, I feel like as a teacher, I'm really seeing how kids or anybody that's in that teachability phase in their life has been influenced by these.
And it's not like it's a bad influence, but what I find is like, what you find now is like, yeah, everyone is just anxious.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's
I mean statistically, the level of it, like the levels of anxiety
I
and
have a
depression
student that
have.
hasn't been to class for she like once, and I've been received like LAC like, oh, this student has like a disability. Talking to the student, oh, I realize it's just I mean, I'm not dumping anxiety, but it's anxiety. And then when you hear how this student is internalizing their experience, it seems quite reminiscent of how you would internalize your experience digitally, like on social media. It's like, my work isn't good enough, and it's just
Yeah,
not
I mean,
photographic, or it's just not Instagram ready. I'm like, it's about what the hell is Instagram?
Yeah.
This is a real space, you know. I mean, because I'm food like that. I'm like, this is
Well, yeah, I think.
like, turn off your phone, man.
I think, yeah, absolutely. Like with the, how social media has become such a huge part of, society. Statistically, the levels of anxiety and mental health issues have gone up because people have this, innate, ability, to compare themselves. It's like, and
being around people is a big thing. Like for me, I think like socializing in virtual reality is different from me and you talking and sharing the same oxygen. And I think we shouldn't downplay the value of like being in each other's presence and because especially for the young minds, you need that at a certain age to understand like the boundaries, like how far you can go with certain ideas or actions. And the turn is, or the drop off is so sharp.
yeah, and I think especially for, either young kids or young artists or young creatives, while they're establishing themselves with Instagram or these technologies, it fosters a lot of self-doubt when they're comparing themselves to others, which I think, does, it's like, you're not comparing yourself to your class or, and doing like critiques there. You're comparing yourself to everybody that's ever created something, and where it does foster so much more self-doubt, which they have not had the ability to find the confidence in themselves prior to that. So yeah, I definitely see the drawbacks that way. But I do think that also it opens doors for people that may not necessarily have the ability to connect to an artistic community. That they're physically they're not able to. So it's great that it opens these doors, but also everything has to be done in moderation. It's like, because then it does, if they have unlimited access, like, yes, please see this as, it's like keep taking things in, then it really does, it makes you doubt your own reality. And it doesn't, you don't have confidence in the reality that you've created, or you haven't had a space to individually create your worldview.
Yeah, I agree with that. So it is useful and can be very useful, but like use it responsibly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Integrate it in the lives of, especially the youth.
Yeah, and I think that you're at the hardest space because you're, teaching, youth in a creative way, but also at this, this huge, there's been so many advancements in the last 3 to 5 years in the technology available to these students. So then really trying to, go, toe the line between both. And I don't think I have an answer that's particularly helpful.
Because you don't want to be that grandpa.
Yeah.
So you're
Get
like,
off my lawn.
yeah, okay.
But isn't it progress though that things are moving towards TikTok as opposed to like literal like FOMO humble brags on Facebook? It's like I feel like the younger generation can detect those so well, like a humble brag.
I think that even the negatives that it
humble
has.
brag.
What's a humble
That's like a social media shorthand for someone saying, "Oh, my child." Like, they're so disappointed that they only won second place out of 1,000 people, or my new car, I could only get the entry level Ferrari.
And I also, like, in the same vein, I think that, in terms of like like the mental health aspect. Like, you know, there are now people, like communities that are able to like come together and like have more of an understanding when they have, you know, more things, and it doesn't have to just be like, we're all projecting to be happy.
Right.
Like, you know, it is more not one single way.
Right.
It is really,
It's not funneling you into like a body image crisis by showing you
exactly. Like, this is how
showing
you
you
should
the
be.
one that everyone's like looking
On the
at.
magazine cover.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Instead, it's like developing subgenres
Yeah.
of dance or, you know, music or design.
Yeah, which I
or
think
comedy,
it is. Yeah,
or-
like I do think in that
Yeah.
way, it is such an incredible tool for community building in that way, because
Right.
it puts you into either people like within that have like if it's like, you know, creatively or whatever, like, you know,
It
you're
allows them-
funnel into it, but you're also able to then either collaborate or like take in or like, you know, build upon the same,
Right.
you know, it's like, but you're people that you would have never had, you know, been able to connect with before, and now is able to, you know, have this creative community like worldwide in ways that you would have never had available to you.
Something about social media 1.0, like, you know, the algorithmic side, that categorizes and labels you and funnels you into something in like a sales mechanism, whereas I feel like the TikTok side
It's doing it
is
in community
organic
based.
and it's like growing up.
Yeah,
and
no,
it's-
that's the thing. Instead of being
Yeah.
like, we're seeing you as marketable people,
Right.
we're seeing you as a community of people.
You're creating your community,
Yeah.
and the algorithm is more open to,
into building that community, or
Right.
expanding that
as
community.
opposed to funneling you into the beauty, beauty
yeah.
products community.
Yeah, instead of like categories of marketing,
right.
you're just people being
Exactly.
able to meet, which I think is like.
Because TikTok was later to the marketing game too.
No,
Obviously,
absolutely.
they're trying to do it
And
now,
it was
but
just like, but before that, it was way more organic as a social media, and it didn't, you know, where Instagram kind of was like really took off very quickly, but was like such a marketing tool. Where TikTok was, you know, less, you know, it was like what, you know, I think it, you know, from when
Yeah.
it first started to when it really gained traction, there was that space, and it was just focused on community building.
right, yeah.
That's how Facebook started.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we were test subjects. So when Facebook first started, before it was open
They
to the
didn't
general
take sponsorship
population,
money. They,
Yeah.
they didn't take marketing dollars
first
for about 10
school-
years.
outside of Harvard was an art school, and it was our school because we went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and so you
I
didn't
slept
get
through
it.
that.
You slept through it, yeah. Sure. So the Art Institute was the
Over
test market
MySpace.
actually for Facebook
Interesting.
before it was open to the public.
Yeah.
Well, Harvard. And then
What the hell are
But that was, but I mean, that was also, I mean, the first. Then obviously, like it changed since then. But you know, behind social media, the aspect is social and socialization. But it
Even-
became an incredibly marketable thing. But I think that TikTok kind of, instead of being marketing in, you know, categories, it was, you know, it's so much more people based again, because I think people kind of became disillusioned from how finance based, you know, these other social media platforms have become.
they'll
Even without
compromise themselves soon.
Even without the marketing, like the way you describe it, that it was like school based,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
automatically categorizes you and puts you into this
Well, yeah,
network.
because
Oh, yeah.
it's
like
still
that's your tribe. It's like where you
100%.
went
It
to
was still
school.
Art
Remember-
students.
do you remember
from
Friends?
art
Art
students,
students.
from an
Yeah,
elite
yeah.
art school too.
And it was art students, and it was also supposed to have repercussions in a physical geographical area. So
Right.
it's like people in a physical age group,
Yeah.
but also in a geographical area, and linking them that
And
way,
you-
having physical consequences. You know, it's like
You kind of know them, like in the lunchroom,
or having
high
the
school,
ability
where
to
it's
meet
like,
up in that physical
and it
space.
creates that fishbowl effect where, ooh, what are they wearing and what are they doing? Like, I feel like one of the last times I was on that type of social media was like 5 years ago, and it was like a glitch in the matrix where it was like in December, and it showed everyone I know and haven't seen in like 20 years in front of their Christmas tree with their families with the same expression. It was like
Yeah.
tree. Like I scrolled
Yeah,
through
you
it,
were
it was
like,
like
this
20.
is, yeah,
I'm
they're
like,
like,
I
this
am
is
never
a symbol.
posting
Yeah, like they're
on
like, you know
social
what?
media.
Half
again.
of these could be fake, but I would never even look to discern the difference
It's like
between
their
them.
smiles are a little bigger and their tree's a little bigger, and like it's like, oh my god, what is
Yeah.
that? And like, why would I want to participate in that?
Yeah, because it's information that
Yeah.
you like don't want to participate in, and it is like, well, this is just what the like quote unquote norm is, or
Right.
the expectation of it.
And it was
Where-
like December 12th or something.
and
that
that
was like
was,
the day.
I feel like, where we kind of become, like, we become complacent and just posting and looking at the same content,
And that's where you feel pressure.
No, it's like, and
do-
that makes it harder. Yeah,
Yeah.
there is that more innate pressure to be like, well, I'm falling short because I'm not doing this, X, Y, and Z, where now,
With TikTok, it's the subgenres and like the community
Yeah.
creation.
And,
I feel
and
like
it's,
different.
and it's like, and it,
Yeah.
it's like, not saying that taking in all this content doesn't inherently make you compare yourself to whatever community, because that is just an innate
Right.
human thing, but I think it is in a much more productive way,
Yeah.
and in a much more, like, really connecting people in a much more genuine way than instead of just being like, well, we're connecting people that you could know, or like based on your
Yeah.
geographical area or mutual friends.
And the other side is I like that, again, counterbalancing the digital world and like sort of the dystopian side of it, you get things like Art Tech House and genres of, immersive theater and performance art and things that weren't really mainstream 20 years ago or like
Not at all.
understood.
Sure.
Even. Everything was just on TV. It's like you're just watching
Yeah.
watching TV on network television and going to the movies and it wasn't
It's
or
so suburban.
yeah,
Yeah.
Or magazines or something or
I mean,
you know.
I like magazines. I write.
Yeah. But now, and magazines are more visual too, but
Sure.
but now you have all of these things where people's minds weren't wired to understand that. Like even like during the pandemic and coming out of that, like I went to one of the Van Gogh things, like which is not like high art, but like at the same
There's
time,
a Chagall one happening
at the
on
same
video.
time though, just seeing
But
average
it's-
families
Right.
enjoying their time and sitting on beanbags.
Yeah.
But
Like
it
for an
is-
hour, they wouldn't have been able to do that 20
They
years ago. It
might
wouldn't
not
have made
have
sense.
even
you know?
taken their children to an art
Yeah, I was
museum.
like, no,
Yeah.
that thing, I was like, these are people, that much, like, I was just like, they've never maybe even been to an exhibit, and their family, or they were never felt engaged enough to go, but it's like,
Right.
increasing the viewership,
Right.
and because it is creating a full experience that people are able to relate to in a really visceral way, it's like, it's digital, but they have this really
It's a
visceral.
bridge.
And to counterbalance, people do more yoga, people do more mindfulness exercises, people are more aware of sounds and
Mhm.
and tastes of things.
I think that there's always been an issue in the art world. So all of us are actually artists in some way in here, or work in the art world. I mean, I would
Yeah.
consider you an artist.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, me too.
So, like, for me, as somebody who also comes from a background in academia, the big question was always like, how do you create a bridge between art and the general population, right?
Yeah.
Because there always was some sort of divide, and I do think that we need to take our time with technology, which is why I do these events, but also, like, technology is another tool, but also it creates a possibility of a bridge,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that that's with disabled students or with families who maybe don't have the education in arts but maybe want to go see the Van Gogh immersive show, and so those experiences and those things have a lot of value, and it's just about taking the time to understand and think about those bridges and how they can connect people.
It's nice to have an hour and have people understand that they could go in there for an hour and have like a meditative experience that's on a different level than a literal experience, like-
Yeah, I think for me, when I always think, because I also create physical artwork, curate, studied, studio art and art history. Roland Barthes in Camera Lucida, when he wrote about that, he writes about the idea of punctum, which is basically the emotional prick that that a photograph has to engage people. And I think I kind of have applied that past, just photography and in terms of art, because that's how art has always been part of human history and human culture is, representation and creation, and it and it's an emotional reaction. And I think that these emerging technologies, a lot of the time, when they're creating these experiences, it allows people to feel more. It has that punctum becomes more of a prick. They really feel it because it does become so much more of a visual experience. So people might not only be able to connect to something visually, but if, you know, their sound or like, you know, it feels like their sense of touch or other senses are engaged, then, you know, they become an art lover and they become connected to the, you know, the creation around them. So I think there's a lot of potential in terms of, a lot of untapped potential even in terms of specifically creation and how viewers engage with artworks. And, you know, even with specifically XR and VR and their ability to create experiences for viewers and have people feel genuinely affected by the art that they take in.
Yeah.
So I you know, in those terms, like, you know, without all the social and other like implications, I think there's a lot of great potential.
So we have 10 more minutes. I just want to make sure that everybody, besides the three of us, has had a chance. Does anybody here want to, I mean, everybody's kind of said something, but does anybody want to add additional remarks, questions, anything?
I kind of just wanted to hear some more about.
From Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you talk a little more?
Yeah.
What specifically?
What specifically?
I just wanted to hear some more about the technology or whatever you're developing.
Yeah. So, I think it sort of plays in with what I was just like with these ideas I've been having lately in discussions with people, where it is intended to be more of like a mindfulness, identity building.
It feels that way.
You're meant to ground yourself in your day. So if I'm feeling anxiety on the way here, like, ooh, who's going to be there and what am I going to talk about? I can like hook in to this world that brings in my interests and sort of makes a post, like what's kind of a post, but a time hook in our world, potentially on blockchain. It's a real moment that, you know, riffs on all the things I like, you know, and it's representative of all of these identity building things. Like I'm into punk, I'm into, you know, horror movies, I'm into cottagecore, I'm into anything like that, and I can sort of put all my happy things together and sprinkle them into this.
Well, the app looks like a universe, right?
Yeah.
So people, I feel like people need to know that. That's important.
Yeah.
So when you first look at it, it's called Noted.
Yeah.
So when you first look at it, it looks like you're like in the universe somewhere. Like there's a million stars, you know.
I'll look up here.
You need to have a Polygon wallet.
To do the blockchain side, but right now we're testing only on Web2 users, so we don't have
Only
any
Web2,
blockchain.
Only visual.
It's still in
Yeah,
development.
we're storing locally on your
Are you
device.
going to get Arbitrum too?
Well,
Yeah, see,
could
this
you sign them
is.
up for user testing?
Yeah, sure, definitely. And so we have all these navigation modes to get through.
What's the name?
through
What's the
these
name?
things.
Noted. By near age.
So, you know, you can.
Noted.
He can sign you up as user testers.
Where you're creating these things in different emotions. So like, you know, one of these is stories from the past, one of these is whimsical stories, one of these is stories of sadness and strength, and you're sort of creating these different trajectories that you're building on, basically. So, you know, this is the physical space, one of the ones we're testing for what represents your idea. So like your moment down the street walking here and, you know, on your way to the meeting or something, that becomes a physical space that's a node. So you go inside of it.
And then can you mint it?
Yeah, so the next step is we're live on the Mumbai testnet. Live on the Mumbai testnet, but we're not live on the mainnet. So it's like so
Polygon testnet?
yeah, Polygon testnet. Yeah.
Polygon testnet.
Yeah. So that's next. And I just need to test it first.
Go early? You use Go early testnet?
No, I'm not sure what we're using.
Yeah,
actually,
there's a lot of testnet.
But,
It's like 2, 3, I think.
yeah, but
Yeah, right.
we're really trying to, you know, when you look at the games of a few years ago, like NFT, like and Web3 games like Axie Infinity and stuff, they became like stock markets.
Yeah.
They became stock markets where people were like making a living doing it. That goes
They're done.
totally against the gamer identity creation role, you know, in their lives to have speculators come in and buy my identity and like run up the price on it. That's like anathema to people who want to experience like a gaming
They might
community.
come back.
Well, I mean, it's its own thing. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a casino.
Yeah.
Which is a different purpose. Like that's not
Like people like want to make
neutral on that. It is what it is.
speculate
But
and
yeah,
make money.
speculation, drive up the price, push
Yeah.
everyone else out. The poor people can't afford it.
These ones like more like headspace.
Yeah, it's like a neighborhood, like a real estate world.
It's
Whereas,
like headspace on the blockchain.
right, which is
It's
where,
a very cool thing.
well,
You know Headspace, the app meditation?
yeah,
Yeah, I know
kinda
it.
like that.
yeah. So we're trying to avoid that by having it be available to everyone. And like I'm thinking of, people in India who just got their first phone or something at 16 or something. It's like I don't want to charge them like $100 and have them hope it'll be $1,000 in one day. It's like, and then they sell it and leave. It's like, that's just not what
Yeah,
our
that's
goal
basically
is.
It's a good concept.
Yeah, but so yeah, on our side, we were like on the basic level with the NFTs, we're looking to pay the gas for people. So people
Yeah,
Polygon.
Polygon. Because like
Yeah.
now like they're gonna have a hard time like moving to Polygon because there's a lot of stuff to do.
I just like the idea of a decentralized ledger that you're putting something
Or you
out
can try
there.
Solana too.
Yeah, I mean,
Solana's layer one.
well, we've been building on Polygon for a year, so we're
But
not
you have a
switched right now.
partnership with them, don't you?
Yeah, we
Oh.
signed like an agreement with Polygon
Polygon.
Studios.
Oh,
and,
Polygon Studios.
yeah, which is now Polygon Labs, but yeah, I went through a stage where I was
Yeah, I
looking
remember.
at Solana and everything, but yeah, Polygon is like fine. It's kind of like the standard for,
Yeah, the standard for
Yeah.
layer two.
yeah, exactly. For brands, like everyone's comfortable with it, so it works fine. But where was I before? Like I think I lost my train
So you
of
could
thought
go to
here.
a Black Rainbow party,
Yeah.
for example,
Yeah.
right? So y'all know I throw these Black Rainbow parties. Jim comes to them sometimes. So that's an example too.
Oh.
Clubs is an example.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So like you could be like,
So this group could be a club.
yeah, so
Yeah.
this could be a club. So like in this moment here, you could take a photo,
Yeah.
right? And then in the
A representative
version, mint
work,
it,
yeah.
but onto this sort of blockchain.
Yeah, where it's like our tribe is
Right,
this club,
and this is
and
our
we can
tribe,
sort of
and then people
yeah.
can, like, it'll be public, so others who were not here, they can interact with that experience. And
Right.
then even the AI, who's kind of like a narrator, you have the option to have them tell a story
Yeah.
about it.
It's a little bit like I was reading one of your articles on the way here, and like POAP sort of, proof of attendance, like
Yes.
that type of thing. It's like
Yes.
proof of life almost. Like
Right.
it's like my life is real.
But
Like,
that's what I was talking
Yeah.
about with wanting to do
Yeah.
that for
Proof of
Black Rainbow.
experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
proof of experience exactly.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
and that's how I really like that you guys are implementing the blockchain,
Yeah.
because I think there's so much potential behind it, and it is a really powerful innovation that isn't just buying and selling NFTs. There's so much more
Right.
that it has the potential to do, and I love that you guys
tracks
are
the
utilizing
provenance.
it as but you track the
Provenance,
and it,
authenticity.
but
you know.
authenticity of experience.
Right,
It's like,
exactly.
but in doing so, you're building a community too.
Like I'm not just
you
putting
know?
it on some social media server at the Arctic Circle for it to be there. With,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So I think that's
Yeah.
like such a great way to use this blockchain technology
Yeah.
that is, available, and I think there is so much potential there in terms of minting. That isn't
Yeah.
how it has been implemented. For since it's become since
Definitely.
blockchain has become a thing.
Yeah, definitely, and hopefully there's lots of other projects that start.
Yeah, and I know, and I think expanding on that, there's so much potential there, and people harnessing it, not just how it has been used, but how
Yeah.
it could be used.
Yeah, I think that use it like this device that everyone has all the time. It's like the whole fact-finding mission of like previous news, and it's like I feel like it's a more postmodern world that
It
we
doesn't
can
have to
imagine
be just
now.
historically, it can be.
It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
useful, and like
Yeah.
because whenever you think of useful apps, you're designing something, you're convincing someone it's useful. It's not necessarily useful. It's sort of like marketing to you that you need
Right.
it.
Of course.
It's I don't know.
And I think it's important for especially because people, there is this, increasing reliance on technology and phones and what you have, but I think it's also important to, being like, okay, looking at it doesn't have, there's so much gaming experiences mobily
Yeah.
that do feel like, you enjoy doing it, but it doesn't feel fruitful, but
Right.
doing it in a way that feels mentally refreshing, and you still feel like you're building a community, you're still like creating something
Yeah.
that feels refreshing to go into, instead of being like, wow, I just spent like 3 hours playing whatever mobile game, and it doesn't feel fruitful. I
Right.
think you're recontextualizing it in a way that does feel mentally refreshing and
Yeah.
fruitful to people, and you're building communities that way. And also, like, when you're building a whole world that you have built, like, there is an innate kind of pride people take in
Right.
that. You're like, oh, this is built on like my experiences, but it's also like influence. It's
Yeah.
everybody's always like, who doesn't love a choose your own adventure book, like,
Right,
from
exactly.
growing up, and it's
Yeah.
and it's like that, and it's engaging in a way that doesn't feel mindless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like predestined, because
Right.
and which I think is what becomes
And that was the problem with
taxing
my
on people.
earlier product,
Yeah.
where it's like we were, I got like a Getty Images subscription of like 100 images and put
Oh,
all
yeah.
of these like
I
really,
remember.
really, I thought like I became the curator for that,
You
know,
totally
and it's
were.
like
Yeah.
it's like I was going for non-obvious sort of vibe-inducing
Yeah.
moments, that were. It was like I was putting together like a photo, like a gallery show or something around town,
And then
that-
we were going to project them in a nightclub.
Right. Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah,
We talked
exactly.
about that for a while.
Well, that was like after COVID, yeah.
But
like
it
we
Right.
still
were
feels
doing more of
limited
a-
and predestined.
Right. It
where-
feels like it feels.
Anybody that enters knows that they're following somebody else's path. Where,
Right, and you
it
get
is-
this recognition problem where people want to see the Marilyn Monroe pictures, and then you end up with the city as like, Eloise at the plaza, and like
Yeah.
Marilyn Monroe here, and like, you get the whole concept of social media iconic events, which 10 years ago, it's like, this is so iconic, this is so cliche. It's like, it's like,
yeah,
like these- everything
your
became
experience
iconic.
is boiled down to
like you go from one
cliches or
iconic thing to
stereotypes.
the next iconic thing to the next iconic thing, and there's no sort
But
of
anybody
nuance.
knows, just like, but yeah, if you're like, visiting New York, you're like
Yeah,
hopping from one iconic place to another,
Right.
which is so not,
right.
comparable to somebody that lives here or like has been to these
And
places. They're
experiences
like,
a neighborhood. And
yeah, and
lives
they're
in.
like,
Yeah.
I don't go to any of those places,
Yeah.
so it's just like
That's
this,
why I like Rowan's parties, that she
Yeah.
sprinkles them around in different
Yeah.
neighborhoods, and it's not all in the same place every
No,
time.
they're always different, just like the art tech event. Always
Yeah.
different spaces.
Yeah, that's circumstance.
So,
Sometimes.
does anybody have any more questions about the space or the artist or for Jem and his company? Any other comments? No? No? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have some of these guys as user
I mean,
testers
yeah,
eventually.
Yeah, I
We're
would.
probably a couple weeks away from being able to open it up to a bigger group, so.
More people?
Yeah.
Yeah, because from what I've looked at, like some of the users that you have, they're going to be very different.
Right. Yeah.
And you were talking about because those people seem to be mostly into gaming, but your platform to me is a lot more than just
What's
gaming.
funny is we don't just segregate by gamers. Everyone is just a gamer these days.
Yeah.
Under 30, everyone is a gamer. So it's like you ask what games they play. There's no one who says none.
Do your kids play games?
You could apply game theory to that.
What's that?
You could apply game theory, mathematics. to
Yeah,
that.
you can include that. Yeah.
Probability.
Yeah.
All right.
Is the are you building a space like Art Tech House?
Well, that's
Well,
what I
not-
would like him to do,
You
actually.
mean IRL, like in real world?
Well,
real life,
It kind of would
all
be,
immersive.
Or do you mean in Horizon
because to me,
Worlds?
like, whenever I'm talking to you and your team and like the evolution I've seen you kind of go through,
Yeah.
like I could see
I definitely want like
your
immersive activations
Yes,
that
exactly.
tie in with the
the tie
storyline
exactly
online.
the tie
Yeah.
in with it.
We
So
tried
it'd
to
be
do that.
exactly like Art Tech House, but like something.
Two things happened. So it's like right after the pandemic, those types of venues were like a godsend to
Yeah.
be able to get out to like an immersive club or
Like a
something.
massive warehouse.
Yeah, and like they were the
Yeah.
first things to open. They were looking for content. They were looking for
Oh yeah,
performers.
sure.
and that was sort of the time for that, where we could have done something like that, and nightlife was scarce enough still that you could get people to come and be like, this is so cool, you know.
Yeah,
But,
that's
but
like
now
3
it's
months,
like I feel
I
like
think you could get something at Purgatory.
yeah,
Ooh.
yeah.
Love
That space
Purgatory.
though is not. It's harder to project things.
I found a warehouse.
It's a little harder, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the upstairs space.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do so if you want. I mean, we should stay in contact.
Or maybe
and we have all
something
layer
there.
I mean,
walls.
I
so
still have
yeah,
a-
it's like yeah, we could talk about doing something here.
That would be interesting.
Like
Yeah.
the paintings were down.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing without any artwork shown. It's a completely white
Get a few projectors and
space.
sort of.
Yeah, I mean we
yeah.
have 2 projectors here
Oh, you
already.
do? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's definitely something I would consider. You know,
It
we
seems like
could,
something your boss would
could
do.
do as sort
Oh yeah,
of,
Carrie would be very
Hey.
into it.
Is that
You
it?
can come in.
Yeah, come on in.
Come on in.
Come on in.
Hey,
Yeah.
how are you?
How are you?
How are you doing? No, you're fine.
How are you?
Good, how are
Good
you?
to see you.
Good to see you too. That's gotta work.
But yeah, no, I would love to do that. And like,
It's gonna focus on-
I feel like we could
Yeah.
really
Focus on
test
the
it
layout.
out in space like this.
Well, I
And
was gonna say,
and-
I
It's
mean,
smaller.
we would,
Yeah, exactly.
like, we
We
would
don't
love
have-
to like stay in.
we don't have to take the risk on for like a full venue. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. It would be great.
Purgatory's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
This would be a small controlled space.
But these walls
Yeah.
are white, you know, so it's easier to.
It's yeah, the
It's a blank
projector-wise,
slate
it's super
here
easy.
as opposed
Like,
to Purgatory. I feel like I don't remember if they have that.
no,
on
no,
the
they
video.
don't. They don't have. Yeah.
Because I used to use this and we used to project something.
Yeah, no, honestly,
So they changed it.
Yeah. Yeah, or like it's just like, and they're not flat walls in the same way that they are here. And then there's the ball, like the bar up there too, and it is more like set up as a stage venue. Whereas you
Live stream going
I
on.
think that would be a lot of fun. Like